You know, when you learn the secrets to hitting your irons flush, it becomes really easy. You look forward to hitting that mid-iron out of the fairway because you know you're going to hit a good one, and most of your playing partners are going to struggle hitting those shots. Now, I've put together 3 of my all-time best videos that are going to share with you some of those real secrets to hitting crisp irons. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I'm really excited. I've got an awesome video for you today. We're going to talk about how you can get out on the course, step over top of one of those iron shots, and be completely confident that you're going to hit the ball solid. You're not going to chunk, you're not going to thin the ball, you're not going to hit it way to the right, way to the left. You're going to make that really crisp, clean contact. We're going to go over 3 of the most important things to do that, and it all starts with covering the ball. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about how you can cover that golf ball and really compress it. Now let's dive right into it. How do we cover the golf ball? And first, let me talk about what the wrong way to do this is, which would be a flip or a scoop. And I think a lot of times people misinterpret. They think that you try to flip or scoop to get the ball up in the air. So if I'm flipping this golf ball or my hands are flipping, a lot of times what I've found is this is an effort for power. So we're going to talk about how to be powerful without flipping that. But if I flip one here, you're going to see how my hands are leaning back, and it makes it really difficult to hit the ball solid. So there, I tried to hit it solid, but I scooped it a little bit. I picked it clean off the ground, kind of thinned it. I came up a good 20 yards short of the green, and it really just didn't have that compression that I really want on there. It feels more powerful because I'm pushing my wrist at the golf ball, or I'm pushing my wrist, which would be this way toward the target. That feels like that should speed up the club head, but that's actually not the right way to speed up the club head. If we cover the golf ball, we can get that club head to accelerate under its own power to really whip through contact and make golf a lot easier. So the first move, let's go over that again here. If I'm flipping, I'm taking my right palm, my right hand, and I'm pushing it toward the target. If you look at the muscles on the inside of your forearm, those are flexing to get you to push your hand forward toward the target. A lot of times also when that hand pushes forward, I run out of room here and my arms will start to chicken wing, or my left elbow will bend as I come into the follow through. That's from that pushing type motion. Now, again, like I said, that seems powerful. I'm using a lot more muscular force here, but I'm not creating the acceleration that I want in the club head. Now, if we cover the golf ball, and all that means is you can kind of think of the loft on this club face at address as being up into the sky. What you're going to feel like is you're turning this loft down and you're going to cover that loft on top of the golf ball. So if I'm looking at this from address, I'm feeling like, this is the sensation I have in my mind, is that I'm covering and I'm taking this golf club and covering it on top of the golf ball like that. That's a sensation. Again, it's not exactly what's happening, but that's the feeling. You'll also feel like your right hand, your right palm, instead of flipping, it's going to feel like the right palm of your hand covers on top of that golf ball also. So I'm really getting my body, my hand. You'll notice that my posture is on top of that golf ball. I'm not standing up out of the shot like this. Everything is covering on top of that. So it's the club face covering it, it's the right palm covering it, and it's the fact that I'm still in my posture covering on top of the golf ball, which is where that term, covering the golf ball, compressing the golf ball, really, almost like de-lofting the club comes from. So how could that create a lot of speed? It doesn't seem like that's going to be very powerful. It seems like it should be more powerful to really flip that club on through there. This actually happens because when you're in this covering type position, you're actually still releasing the club. The club is on the way to releasing, but it's the fact that you still have this forward shaft lean that allows you to whip that club on through. So if I can imagine here, let me take a club that has forward shaft lean on it and let me pull the butt into this grip up. Watch what happens to the club head. It really accelerates on through there. A very small amount of force on the butt end of this club can get that club to whip on through. The only way I can do that though is to have some lag in forward shaft lean as I'm starting down. So here, as I'm starting my downswing, there's a couple things I want you to feel. Number one, I want you to feel like your right wrist is bent back. Really, really bent back. Number two, and this is very important, I want you to feel like you're swinging inside out or out to the right. I almost feel like when you're swinging this club, if I'm facing the camera here, I'm swinging the club this way, about 45 degrees out to the right. As I open my body, that's going to allow that club to square up. All right, so that's the first 2 pieces. Wrist back, swinging out to the right. And then number 3, I still want to be releasing this golf club, but I want to release it in front of this golf ball. So if I put a golf ball kind of down my target line here, say 4 or 5 feet in front, I'm imagining that I'm going from this covered position to releasing that golf ball, and now I've gotten rid of all these wrist angles up here. That allows me to get this compression on the golf ball at contact and still release it to get the speed. Now, let's put those pieces together. On the first couple reps, I want you to do 5 or 6 of these while you're practicing. Focus only on the right wrist. The right wrist is staying back, and I'm gonna feel like I keep my body rotating all the way through to a good full finish to accelerate all the way around. So here, I'm really gonna feel like my right wrist is back, that club is covering on top of it, and I'm gonna accelerate to a good full finish position. Let's see if we can hit a nice one here. There we go, that one's right at the flag. Just probably 10 feet right of the flag, hit that one nice and solid. So there, again, the right wrist is back. I'm still getting speed because I'm naturally gonna release out in front. The second 5 or 10 reps I want you to do here, we're gonna focus in on that inside out motion that we mentioned. So if we start to come over the top and feel like we have this big lag angle, I'm gonna start chopping down into it. To be nice and shallow and thin and hit that ball cleanly off the ground, I need to have the sensation that I'm swinging this way, out to the right. It's only when my body opens up, and you can see as my hips start to open, that's gonna square that up to where I'm swinging toward the target. A lot of players keep their hips square and they hit at it with their hands and arms, with their wrist. That's not what we wanna do. We wanna have the momentum of the body, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit, carry it through there. So the sensation is I'm swinging out to the right, and since my body's opening up, that actually squares me up going toward the target. So this second 5 or so reps, to get a little more comfortable with it, right wrist back, you're swinging to the right, and you're gonna let your opening body square everything up. So let's go ahead and try that out. There we go, another good one. Just barely left of the flag on that one. Actually hit that one too good, that's gonna be a little long. Yeah, just about 10 or 15 feet past the flag. Now, from there, let's go to the last piece here. This releasing out in front, which is the last key to covering the golf ball. Now, if I'm covering this golf ball, again, the misconception a lot of players have is they're gonna get this wrist angle here. I'm gonna be down, and then I'm just gonna hold all that off. If I do that, I lose tons of speed. I need to release this golf club toward that golf ball out in front. So I'm gonna have these same ideas, these same sensations. Wrist back, swinging out to the right. But when I go ahead and swing through, I'm gonna go ahead and let that all release. Everything's going out in front of this golf ball. I'm gonna let all that energy from the club release toward the target, and that's also what keeps it really square as you're coming through. That nice square face gliding through the golf ball, going out toward the target, that's gonna make things a lot easier. If I feel like I'm holding off on it, it's gonna open, I'm gonna block it to the right, a lot of bad stuff's gonna happen. So I have to go ahead and let that club head go as I'm making this swing. Let's give that one a whirl. There we go, another one nice on the green, just a little right of the flag. So those are really gonna help you to what's called cover or compress the golf ball, those 3 areas there. That's just the first piece. I got some another few great tips that are gonna help you to build on this and get your game even more consistent. Okay, so that's a covering of the golf ball. That's really gonna help to get those wrist angles really good. Now let's talk about how we can get a lot of that, feeling like you're pushing again, that flipping, that scooping, like the arms are doing all the work. How do we get away from that and get the momentum coming from the body? And there's actually a pretty common mistake. That brings us to our second key, which is if we're gonna be a really good iron player, we have to let the body build the momentum, and then the arms just add a little speed to it. So to get that momentum from the body has to continue to rotate through the shot. Now, earlier in this video, I mentioned that if we wanna cover this golf ball, it's the forward shaft lean from the club, which is actually gonna be releasing past the golf ball. That's completely fine, that's what we want. It's this right wrist at impact being kind of angled back, feeling like your palm is covering the golf ball, and then that's releasing after impact. And then third, I mentioned that your upper body, or your posture, you have to be kind of down where your upper body's feeling like it's on top of this golf ball, which is gonna help you to feel that sensation of covering that. Now, what most players do, what they get wrong, is that when they're hitting this iron shot, they tend to let their hips come forward, their upper body comes up and back, and now all of a sudden, if I was to have this covered motion to really have the forward shaft lean, I couldn't reach the golf ball. Right? If I was covered, I'd be here, but if I stand up out of my posture, all of a sudden I can't reach the golf ball. So what do I do to solve this problem? I start to flip and scoop, like we talked about we don't want to do earlier, and that creates all that bad contact. So if we want to get the momentum from the body, there's 2 things that have to happen here. We have to get it in a position to where I can be down and covered and stay in my posture. but then still have everything moving on through. That's where the big key comes in. A lot of players that try to cover the golf ball, what they'll do is they'll stay down in their posture, but then they just stay down in it forever, right? So it ends up being all arms, it doesn't work, and it feels terrible. What we actually want to have happen here is, as I start my downswing, if you imagine my belt buckle, there's a laser shooting out of that. As I start my downswing, I want that to be going down toward the golf ball. So my hips are kind of down toward the golf ball, my chest is down toward the golf ball. But then as I finish my swing, now all that comes up. My belt buckle's facing up toward the target. My chest is nice and high. If I had a laser shooting out of my shirt buttons, it would be nice and high here. And I'm coming all the way along around, my chin's even nice and high. That allows me to complete the swing, and that's when I actually have extension. So early extension, as a lot of people call it, or what would be the opposite of covering the golf ball, is when my upper body extends early. It extends in the downswing as I'm coming into the golf ball. The proper extension or later extension would be I'm coming down, covering the golf ball, and then I extend up as I come through the fall through. The cool thing about this, it ties in with exactly what we talked about when we took this butt into the club and we let it whip through the ball. If I get a bunch of this lag, and now I'm down in my posture, as I extend up, I'm taking this grip and I'm pulling it up. That allows the club to whip on through with a ton of momentum. Now I could use the momentum of my body. Now I can use my hips and the big muscles of my body to carry that club through there. So let's try this out. Do another 5 or 10 reps for me. As you start your downswing, feel like everything, until your left arm is about halfway in the downswing, feel like everything's getting closer to the ground. My belt buckle's down, my chest is down, everything's down. I feel like I'm really gonna be close to this ball, covering on top of it. And then as you finish, so we're gonna pause in that position a few times. So go back to your setup, pause and feel that position. And then as I finish, I'm letting everything whip on through. Now my belt buckle's up, my chest is up, my chin is up, and I'm coming to that good full finish position. 5 or 10 of those, just pausing in each piece. Pause here, and then pause in the good full finish. You're gonna start to build that muscle memory, and what you're gonna feel, the sensation I get, is almost like my body is doing a lot of the momentum, and the club is just swinging along. My club and arms are just swinging with the momentum of our body. Like we talked about early, those hands swinging out to the right. As my body momentum opens up, that squares the face. That gets this club really working with us rather than against us. So let's try that out again. Watch as I first start my downswing, my chest feels like it's getting closer to the ground, then I'm coming to that good full finish. Let's give it a whirl. See if I can cover this one and really let that club release out in front of this golf ball. All right, nice and solid, definitely covered it. You can see I stayed in my posture. All right, so we covered piece number 1. We gotta cover the ball. We gotta really compress it. Piece number 2, we gotta create momentum from the body by using those hips and really coming through that good full finish. And piece number 3, we have to make sure that we're shallow and we don't chop down into this golf ball. If we start a downswing and our butt into the club, imagine there's a laser pointing out of this. It's pointing inside the golf ball. Now all of a sudden I'm gonna chop down into this, or again, if I feel myself starting to come down really steeply, what's the natural thing? I bet you're a really good athlete and you do this without even having to think about it. You start down a little steep, and then to shallow that out, you let the hips come forward, you let the body back out, and then all of a sudden you flip a little bit to keep yourself from slamming this club down into the ground. What we have to do now is to shallow that club out. So if I was making a swing here and I paused again kind of in the first half of my downswing, I want the butt end of that club to be pointing either, if we're looking from down the line, either at the golf ball or a little outside the golf ball, so that now, again, as I extend on through, that club's coming nicely down the plane line and I can whip on through there, get that club to release in front without having to shallow it out. If I start down steep again, if I try to cover it, bam, I'm slamming down into the ground. So what you're naturally gonna do, if you start down steep, you're gonna stand up and you're gonna flip. So all these things tie into each other. Now you remember in the first part of this video, I talked about how you wanna have this sensation that you're swinging out to the right. This is really gonna pair up with what I'm about to talk about here. I wanna feel like that club is shallowed out there and it feels like I'm swinging out to the right. So if I pause myself halfway down and I didn't open my body at all, my body was square, I wanna feel like I'm in a position where I could swing this way. Or that club would be really shallow here. I'm coming away from the inside. The only thing that squares that up is now, as my body rotates on through, that brings that club coming through and allows it to whip on through. So if you imagine, if I get this club way to the inside and I open up my body, look how that really whips the club on through. So I'm just opening my body, and the momentum of the club wants it to whip through from shallow position. What I don't want to do here, if I was steep and I opened up my body, watch what's going to happen. That club's going to want to really get stuck under, really chop down. It's almost going to want to hit me. I'm working against the momentum of the club. If I'm shallow, I can open up and work with the momentum of the club. So here, I want you to make a couple practice swings, pause halfway down, and really feel like to you, before you're opening your hips, you're setting up to swing to this golf bag over here. I'm just going to swing way to the right like that. If I was to hit a golf ball doing that, without opening my body, it would look something like this. Way over there. I think I probably hit that one in the water almost 30, 45 degrees right. That's because I didn't let the momentum of my body open everything up. I'm going to make that same swing now, but I'm going to go ahead and open up my hips, and that's going to sling everything toward the target. That's a real big key there. Look at all the tour players. Look at their body at contact. You're not going to see anybody in this position on the PGA Tour. You'll see a lot of guys that are opening the hips at contact, really finishing that swing coming back to the left. So the third key here is you're going to feel like halfway down, the butt end of your club is pointing way out to the right, and you're going to feel like that club is nice and shallow. Then you let your body open up to square back up the face. Let's give that a whirl. There we go. I might hit that one the best of any of them. All right, so let's recap on these really good keys. Number one, we want to cover the ball. That happens from my right wrist, my club face, and my body all being on top of the golf ball. The big key there is that I can't hold this angle forever. I have to release that club after contact. I don't want to be flipping into here. I want to be feeling like that club swinging to the right, and my right hand is covering on top of that golf ball. Number two, we have to use the momentum of the body. If I stop my momentum and I keep everything feeling like it's down toward the ground, I never come up out of that, I'm going to have to use all hands and arms. You're naturally not going to do that. What you're going to do is early extend and start to flip doing that. We don't want to do that. We have to make sure that we get that nice squat. Everything is staying covered over top of the golf ball, but then as we come to the finish, we're really letting the belt buckle, the chest, the chin, everything come up. And again, that's going to whip this club on through. Let the club do the work for you. Then number three, we can't be steep. If I start down and feel like my club shaft is steep like this, as I open up, that's going to get me in a terrible position. I need to feel like I'm shallowing out, swinging way out to the right, and then let my opening body carry the club toward the target. If we do those three pieces, we're going to put them all together. We're going to hit those nice, crisp, clean golf shots, and you're going to feel really, really confident when you're sitting over top of your iron shots. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make a really smooth transition, get a great weight shift, so I'm not going to be rushed at all, but I'm going to get some pretty good speed. So I got a 6-iron here. Let's go ahead and see what I can do. There we go. Hit that one really nice, straight as a string. And you'll notice I was very smooth there, but I was able to get almost 100 miles an hour clubhead speed with this 6-iron, 99 miles an hour. Tour average is about 93, 94. I got 192 yards of carry on that, so it probably rolled out to over 200. And hit that really, really solid. So how can we get that much speed but look so smooth while we're doing that in the transition? Most players just have their weight shift totally wrong. And if you make the mistake of having the improper weight shift, or more specifically, a very late weight shift, it's going to look really jerky. On this swing, I'm going to make the incorrect weight shift. I'm going to feel like I get way too late of a weight shift on the backswing and the downswing, and you're going to see it just looks all out of whack. So here's the mistake that I see a lot of players make. They don't get to the right early enough, and then they don't get to the left early enough. So they wait until the downswing to start their shift to left, and it looks something like this. So now my body is kind of out of sync with everything else, and even though that one went fairly straight, I just so happened to get the face squared up. It was thin, it was off the heel, it actually felt like more effort, and my swing speed went down probably 10, 15 miles an hour. Let's check it out here. Yeah, it went down 16, 17 miles an hour. The distance went way down, and it looked worse while I was doing it. It looked even more jerky while I was doing that. So let's go over the wrong weight shift and the right weight shift and how to do this. The number one thing that I see is players get to the right way too late and to the left way too late. What I mean by this is a lot of times players will set up with their weight on their lead foot, and they'll wait until they're about back here before it ever starts going to the right foot or starts shifting to the right. Well, with the advantage of all these high-tech force plates and all these measurements that we can take now, we know the best players in the world are getting that weight shift very early. So they're going to have the most transition to the right or the most weight moving to the right almost before the club even starts to move. For me, I kind of lift my left heel, or lift my left toe, excuse me, and get my weight bumping to the right before I even move the club. So I want to feel like that weight is moving to the right before the club even goes, and it's going to feel like it's pretty daggone far on my right side when I'm right here. So I get that weight shift very early, almost like in the first foot of the backswing, and that gets everything moving over there. If you tend to struggle getting to the right early enough, all I recommend doing is starting out with a little bit more weight on your right foot. So here, I probably got about 55, 60% on my right foot, and 35, 40, 55, whatever it is on my left foot. So I'm a little bit slightly toward my right foot is all I'm trying to say there. The number doesn't have to be exact. If you're 55, 45, or 60, 40, it doesn't make any difference. It's just saying you really need to get it to the right very early. Don't get caught up in the exact percentage there. So if you want to feel like you start with a little bit more pressure on the inside of the right foot, I like to feel it on my toe right here, just on the inside of the toe, the kind of the ball of the foot. That's where I want to start out at. Now from here, you're going to see that's going to smooth out my transition because I'm already ahead of my weight shift. It's already going to the right. Just a nice little draw there. Again, didn't feel like I had to rush it. Swing speed was high. Weight shift was really good. Now, the next thing, once you get your weight to the right early enough, you got to get it back to the left early enough. And here's the real kicker. There's two little moves that I like to do for this. What we found with the best players in the world is that when their hands get about right here, they're already starting to shift their weight to the left. Here's the way I want you to feel like that. When your hands get about right here in the backswing, I want you to feel like you bump out your left knee and get your weight going to your left foot. And at the same time, you have the hands just kind of float back here. I don't want to yank down on the hands really quickly. I want, as I shift to the left, I want my hands to kind of float in the backswing, and I want my shaft to shallow out as that's happening. So that's going to look something like this. My hands are about chest high in the backswing. I kick out my left leg and bump to the left. And at the same time, my hands stay roughly in the same position, but this shaft kind of shallows out as I'm doing that. So I get that little bump, a little bit of open to the left, weight's moving to the left, and at the same time when I'm doing that, I'm shallowing out that shaft. When I do that in a real swing, it's going to look something a little bit more like this. Right? So I'm letting that bump and shallow at the same time. I wait until I've got that little bump and shallow, and then I swing down. The mistake that I see almost everybody make, they get to the right, then they start swinging down as they shift to the left. That's no good. You got to get to the left and shallow, then you make your downswing. So I almost feel like my hands are floating in the backswing, so they're not pulling down, they're floating in this direction as I get my weight shift. That's the move that I want you to feel. So let's go ahead and do that one again, and notice how smooth. So all in this area, it's going to look like my hands aren't even moving at all, but I'm still going to get a ton of club head speed. I'm actually going to crank this one up and get a little extra. Let's see if I can get over 100 miles an hour club head speed, all while looking smooth while I'm doing that. Now, there's no way I'd be able to do that if my transition was rushed at all. Let's give it a whirl. There we go. Hit that one about as hard as I can. Nice little draw there, 102 miles an hour club head speed. That's good for me. 200 yards of carry, all with a 6-iron. You really got to get that weight shift down to be able to get those kind of numbers and make it look smooth at the same time. All right, so let's talk about how to be incredibly consistent, hit the ball really solid, and make a lot of the same moves that the tour pros are making. Let's give it a shot. There we go. I hit that one pretty daggone good. Ball's just got a nice little draw to it, just right of the target. 194 carry with a 6-iron. Felt like I swung easy, 97 miles an hour. That's 3, 4, 5 miles an hour faster than tour average. And it's all about, for me, what I'm feeling there is I want this club to lag and then whip and kind of just take off through contact to get that easy, effortless speed. I really want to feel like the ball just sinks into the face and just kind of explodes off there. Let me walk you through a progression of exactly how to get that same feeling. So the first thing we're going to do is something that's incredibly counterintuitive. Almost nobody does this the right way without being kind of taught what's happening here. Now, most people square up the face by doing this, throwing the hands at it. Now, that gets the face square, but I don't have my body open. I'm standing up out of my posture usually when I do that, so I'm not staying in my posture. My body isn't open, and I don't have my hands in front. From that position, this position here, it's almost impossible to hit the ball with really good quality consistency. So it's never going to feel that good. Even if you hit it right on the center of the face, it doesn't feel that great. So what pros are doing, instead of squaring the face up like this, they're actually like this at impact. So that face is really closed. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to get down in my posture, set it up behind the ball, and that would be shooting way off to the left there. So there's two things I do. I open my hips and I lean my hands in front, and now the face is square. Now I didn't change my wrist angles. The wrist angles are the same. I just turn my body and turn my arms in like that. So basically I'm taking this wrist angle and I'm going like that to get my hands in front and my body open, and that puts me in the pro-like position. So that's the first piece, getting used to being in this pro kind of power move from there. So I want you to do 10 or 15 little swings to get comfortable with that first piece. Now when I do that, I'm going to really compress it. You're going to hear the sound of it is nice and solid when I get into that pro position. There we go, really solid shot. Again, it's coming out low and hard, lots of speed on it. Again, nice little draw there. Now the second piece of that, when you get those hands in front, now you finally got a chance to be consistent. Your shoulders have to move in a different way too. See, most people, when they're used to kind of throwing the club, they stand up out of their posture, the shoulders stall, and then the arms just kind of throw at it. That's what makes the club lose the shaft lean. Well, what the great pros are doing is once they get in that shaft lean position, they're getting left shoulder low, and then they're feeling like almost like somebody's on your back, and you're going to turn up and through the shot, and you're going to throw somebody off your back. So if you imagine somebody was kind of leaning on your shoulder there, you get in this good position, I'm going to throw them into the wall here. So if I just grab my arms, put them across my shoulders, I'm going to get this shoulder low, and then I'm going to use my legs to rotate, and I'm going to turn through the shot like that. So really I'm trying to pull this shoulder up and through as hard as I can. That gets that little whip through contact. Now finally, I want to have the extension. It doesn't really do me any good to have this shaft lean if it's only for a split second and then I throw it right after that. I want to feel like I smush the ball into the face. And as I rotate through, as I'm throwing this person in the wall, I want my hands to extend toward the target. Imagine it like this. The logo of my left hand is going to extend toward the target as long as possible. I want to have my hands kind of waist high here in the follow through, logo of the glove toward the target. Same thing with the right hand. I'm going to have that right hand extend when my hands are waist high, palm of my hand toward the target. Now in reality, that's not going to happen. The club will go ahead and release through there. But if you have that sensation, you're going to realize, oh dang, I have a lot more lag now. I have a lot more shaft lean, and it feels a lot better. So let's put those three things together. I'm going to feel like I get my wrist turned down like the pros are doing. I get my shoulder from low to high, throw that person in the wall, and I'm going to extend on through the shot. And this time I'm going to do something a little different. I'm barely going to swing. I'm going to feel like I make a half swing, real slow, real smooth, but I'm going to compress it like the pros do, and let's see how my shot ends up. So that one didn't feel like I swung very hard at all. Nice and smooth, again, 6-iron, 185 carry, 92 miles an hour, a swing speed that's about what the average pro is doing, but I felt like I put out about 20% power on that. And to be honest, I didn't even hit that one that solid. I probably could have got another 5 to 7 yards out of it if it just wasn't a hair thin. So even when you miss it one, they're still pretty daggone good. Now, a lot of players have trouble doing this. What they do when they get this club closed is they end up coming over the top. You see, when I'm not used to opening up my body, I kind of stand up and throw. Well, all of a sudden, if I take these same positions that I'm used to having, and now all of a sudden I turn my body open more. That's that getting the hips more open. I get the club face closed like that. Now I'll start to pull over to the left. There's two pieces of this. Piece number one is closing the face. Piece number two is shallowing that club out from the inside so that you can deliver it from the inside and all this makes sense. You see, if I don't get that second piece right, it's almost impossible to get the whole picture putting it together. Once you get the whole picture, it's like, oh, okay, now I can see why I never was able to figure this out before. Now I have a great bonus video for you. It's called the tennis racket drill, and it shows you both of these pieces. I'll walk you through in even more detail exactly what to do with the hands and wrist, the proper way to close them, and I talk about the angle that you need to come down to hit really nice, solid, compressed shots. I'm going to play a preview of that video, and here in just 1 second, all you need to do is go ahead and click on one of the cards that pops up on the screen. And don't worry if you don't see one of those, just go down to the description down below and click on the link there. You'll get instant access to that tennis racket drill where I walk through how to do the wrist and the swing plane together, and you're gonna hit some great shots. I can't wait to share it with you. We're gonna have a blast learning this together. Let's go ahead and get started right now with the tennis racket drill. Good player problems. We're gonna talk about shallowing that club shaft out as we're starting down, as we're doing this rotating of the face that we worked on in the last video. As we start this downswing, what you'll see with basically all of the top players is instead of coming kind of over the top and letting the hands come out away from their body, letting the club come out away from their body, again coming down steep into the ball and then having to open up, kind of fillet open the face and add loft to it, the flattening of the shaft should happen as soon as we start down. So as we start this downswing, what we want to have happening here, you can imagine that if I draw a line from the hosel of my club up through my right elbow, that's my swing plane line, my elbow plane. As I go to the top of the swing, I'm going to be slightly above that. And then as I start down, I want my hands to start to shallow out. I want the club to shallow out inside of this elbow plane. And at the same time,